Furita is the slightly anglicized Japanese word. It means a free man. This word, this term, Furita, is used in the context of several recent recent developments and phenomena and social and cultural phenomena, which we can observe today in the Japanese society. Furita is this phenomenon is about a decade old, and we can estimate that today the group of people which are addressed to as Furita is about 10 million individuals big. So it's a relatively big number of people, and what's more important, they are mostly, almost exclusively, very young or young people who are, they are unwilling to compete in the feudal Japanese society, and they are not willing to be employed in the Japanese companies for several years or for a decade or for the whole life, which was very popular in Japan several decades ago, several years ago. But they are they are not practicing it so often as they used to be, but these young people, they are watching the Hollywood-made movies and European movies, and they want to be free. They want to be addressed to as equals, and not as subordinates treated by the boss in the typical Japanese film like servants. The boss in many Japanese firms and factories, the managers are quite convinced that it's their responsibility and their duty to make the servants feel inferior to the manager and feel like servants in order to provide the typical Japanese hierarchy and the way of functioning, a way of acting. But the young people, they don't want to compete with those rules, and they want to be free, so they are accepting jobs mostly for very short terms, for particular projects. For instance, they also want to very often to work home and don't be put in the situation when they could be subordinated in an old fashion, and they also tend to work more often than they used to in the Western companies, where the hierarchy is not so strict and the relations are more equal socially. And we can only think how deep this change of Japanese society we can observe today is. For instance, in the 19th century it was the effect of the Western taboos that the Japanese passed several laws to ban, for instance, almost naked physical workers and rickshaw boys and etc. From the street. And they were obliged to, they had to put some more clothing on them, and it was clearly the superficial change, because the Japanese relation to their body and their way of thinking about this whole physics of human body didn't change very much, but these laws were made and passed, and so there was a change, and we can only estimate how deep this change, this Furita phenomenon is today. We have now the West is liberal, so the influence exercised by the Westerners is also sociologically liberal, so the effect is also kind of liberal. But maybe this Furita phenomenon will be a very a blessing for Japanese economy, because for instance, during the catastrophe of Fukushima power plant, it was a serious problem within the Japanese society was observed, that the people are so much afraid of forming their own opinions, and so possess so little courage to confront the managers and their superiors, the managers and so on, that they rather didn't form their opinion and didn't stop several threats, or didn't solve the problems in dealing with this catastrophe, in order to not make the boss cross or something. So maybe this Furita phenomenon will result in a healthier Japanese society in the nearest future.